I'm Shane with eTrailer.com. Today we're going to be taking a look at showing you how we installed the Demco Air Force One braking system on our 2014 Ford Edge. What the braking system is going to do, it's going to give you a brake system in the car while it's being flat towed, so you don't have to rely on the brakes from the RV to slow down both vehicles. With the Air Force One, it relies on air pressure from the RV. It's going to send the air pressure when you apply the brakes in the RV. It's going to send the air pressure through this line, through an operating unit that is mounted inside the vehicle. An airline tube is ran inside to a cylinder that is mounted on the brake pedal arm. When that air pressure goes inside to that cylinder stretches and applies the brake in the vehicle, allowing it to slow down and stop itself. On the RV side for this system, we're going to have this L bracket with this air fitting that we mount to the back. We're going to have a tank system that we mount underneath the vehicle somewhere, and we have lines that run up to the braking system on the RV. When this is plugged in, with that setup, that's going to give us our air pressure through this line to our towed vehicle. On the front of our towed vehicle, we're going to have another air fitting that we're going to mount to our base plate. It's going to have an airline tube that runs up and gets the air pressure to the operating unit. Our line coming from our air fitting at the front comes to our air in port on our operating unit. Again, we have our air out that goes to our cylinder mounted on our brake pedal. Here under the RV, the first thing you're going to want to do to start your installation is mount your air tank. On our passenger side frame rail, there's plenty of holes already existing in the frame, so we're not going to have to drill any. You can just run your 2 bolts through it, and you can see it holds it very nice and tight in place. Coming from our air tank, we're going to have 3 lines. We're going to have this line here that's going to run to the back of the RV. This is going to go to an L bracket or air fitting. You're going to have this one here. You can see it runs in between our tank and this system here. This is going to be our metered air. And then you're going to have this line here. You can see it runs right into our tank. This is going to be our supply line. These 2 lines, we've got to run up to right above the rear axle to our supply line and metered air line coming off the RV. For my metered air and supply air lines, I just followed this existing line right here on the inside of my frame rail, zip tied it along the way. Next thing you want to do is you want to empty all the air out of your lines. How you're going to do that is you're going to turn your RV off and you're going to press on the brakes until your tanks are empty. For your supply line, you're going to look for this green line right here, this very large green line. Once you have all your air out, cut that line in half. You can kind of see where I've got it cut. You're going to get a brass T-bracket or T-fitting that looks like this. You're going to put your green line in both ends. Make sure it's inserted well, make sure your line is clean, and make sure it's flat. You're going to take your supply line from your tank on the new tank that you just installed, and you're going to run it right into the end. That's going to supply your new system with air pressure from your RV. Metered air is going to be this black line going from this bottom up to here. You can see kind of where it loops over right here. You're going to have a smaller brass T-fitting. You're going to do the same thing you did with your supply air. Cut that line in half, make sure the lines are clean, make sure they're flat, and make sure they're inserted well on both ends. You're going to take your metered air line, which was the center air line from our new tank that we installed, and you're going to insert it in there. And then our line that runs back to our L bracket, which is this bottom one. Zip tied it right to this existing line here. Went over the top, right over the top of this frame rail, right to the back, right up over top here. Then I mounted my L bracket with the female side air fitting on the RV. I run my airline tube right over my frame here, right into the back of it. Mounting this, you're going to get all the hardware to mount it. Doesn't matter really where you mount it, you just want to make sure wherever you run your airline tube, it's not going to be kinked, it's cut straight, and you insert it well. On any of the airlines that you run, even off your air tank, you want to make sure you're staying away from anything hot or moving. Now you'll want to mount your operating unit. You can mount it anywhere on the vehicle you want, as long as it's not anywhere where it's going to be like submerged in water or right up against any extreme heat. I chose to mount mine right on the engine cover, or on the this large foam pad on top of the engine. And what I did is I just used some small bolts that were able to fit through the holes in this flange. Fender washer on the bottom side with a nylon lock nut. You can see it's held in place very well. After that, it's a good idea to go ahead and mount your breakaway switch. You're also going to have an air fitting that comes in your kit that you're going to have to mount. So what I did is, because this base plate doesn't have any location for me to mount anything, what I did is I used a no-drill short mounting bracket, which can be found here at hr.com. It does not come in the kit. What I did is I just mounted one on one side and one on the other right together. Your breakaway switch is going to have two wires, an orange and black wire and a blue wire. I routed the two wires up behind my driver's side headlight into the engine compartment. My blue wire I ran underneath this box, and I attached it to one of the black wires coming off the operating unit. And you can see here I used a heat shrink butt connector. These do not come in your kit, but I would highly recommend them because this is going to be outside, open to the weather. This is going to help protect those connections from corroding. I routed my black wire from my operating unit underneath this box, following some existing wiring. One thing to keep in mind is if you mount it this way, if this cover has to come off to have any engine work done, you want to have enough in here that whoever's working on it can just cut the zip ties and take this whole thing and set it aside without having to unhook anything. So I routed it around right underneath this box and I connected it to my blue wire. So I have plenty that if they cut the zip ties off, this will actually feed out from underneath and they can take this whole panel and set it off to the side. Next, your second black wire. That is going to be a ground wire. You can ground it anywhere on metal. I chose to extend mine and run it right over here to this factory ground. Next, you're going to take your airline tube. You want to make sure it's cut flush. Make sure there's no kinks, there's no bends in it. You're going to put it in the air in port. I routed the same way I did my black wire and my blue wire. Around, underneath this box, same way as my blue wire, underneath this, back down and out right here, back behind my bumper, right into the back of my air fitting. We're going to take our remaining airline tube, we're going to go to our air out port, we're going to cross the firewall. Driver's side here, you're going to have a rubber grommet on your firewall. We need to poke a hole in it, and we're actually going to be sending our airline tube through that grommet to the inside. Before putting your airline tube through, there's a brown wire that comes in your kit. Take that brown wire, tape it to your airline tube, and push it through that grommet with your tube. The other end of the brown wire is going to connect to the orange and black wire coming off your breakaway switch. You can see right here. Again, another heat shrink butt connector. Other end, we're putting on our fuse holder. This fuse holder, once we have everything connected, is going to be connected to the positive side of the battery. Inside our vehicle, the next thing you want to do is you want to mount your indicator light. Typically, we like to mount them up here on the back side of the mirror so that you can see it in your rear camera on your RV. There's going to be an LED strip light, and the wire you can just run up above your headliner, right across your driver's side, down your pillar. Keep in mind, if you have a side curtain airbag, you want to go behind that airbag. You don't want to come in front of it because you don't want it to affect that airbag coming out if necessary. Go behind the airbag, you're going to run right down this pillar to the side of the dash here. You can pop off this whole kick panel just by pulling up on it. You have a rubber seal here. This rubber seal actually goes down underneath this panel. And you can take your wire and you're going to feed it back right here underneath your dash. On the end of your wire, you're going to have a red and black wire. Next, you need to mount your reed switch. Your reed switch goes on your cylinder that is mounted on your brake pedal. This is going to be harder to see, but it's going to be a little bitty light that hooks onto it, and off the end of it, it's going to have a brown wire, a blue wire, and a black wire. The black wire coming from your reed switch hooks into the red wire on your indicator light. The blue wire coming off your reed switch hooks into the black wire coming off your indicator light with a white wire that's going to need to be grounded somewhere on metal. I grounded mine straight back on the firewall. You're probably going to have to cut a little bit of insulation out. And then the brown wire coming off gets connected to the brown wire that we fed in with our airline tube. And your airline tube is actually going to hook into the top of your cylinder here. But before you actually make that connection, what I suggest is you mount this onto your brake pedal arm. Then you're going to have a bracket that mounts to the firewall with a large self-tapping screw. You want to make sure when mounting that bracket that the back of the cylinder when the brake pedal is pushed, push this kind of straight into it. You don't want it to go off to an angle, or the bracket to be off at an angle, because you want the brake pedal to work properly. When doing it, you want to make sure that the line has about a 1/4 inch of play, and that is for, you want to make sure that your brake pedal is coming all the way back out so that your light doesn't stay on. This is the bracket that mounts to the firewall. There's actually an adjustment screw right up on the top here for an Allen wrench to help you make that adjustment to make sure you have enough play in that line. Once you've got that mounted, you can go ahead and insert your airline tube into the top. You can bundle up your wires and hide them up or zip tie them up top behind the dash to some factory wiring. Now with my extra wires here, or extra wiring, I'm going to go ahead and tape my butt connectors up. This will help hold my wires in place. And then I'm going to bundle it all together. I'm going to tape it up behind my dash to some factory wiring. It's just a matter of looking up in there and finding there's actually some that come right off the back of this plug here. Just get it up in there where it's not going to interfere with your brake pedal or your steering arm. Then you're going to have vacuum line in your kit. Connect it onto the vacuum port on your operating unit. Up about 3 inches, cut it in half. You're going to insert one of your check valves. You're going to make sure that the black side or black end is going towards the operating unit. Then hook on the rest of your tubing onto the other end. Route it up and across over to the driver's side firewall. Our vacuum line needs to tie into the vacuum line coming off the brake booster. It's going to be hard to see, but it actually loops down underneath of the firewall. It's actually going to go from here. You can see that right there. It loops down under and comes to here. I have to put a T fitting in there, and I also have to put another check valve in there. So what I did is this clamp, I took it off this side and pull that off. I slid it out like this. You can see where my T fitting is. Now this line, the factory vacuum line, is a little bit bigger. So in your kit, you're going to get 2 fittings. It's going to have a large end on one side and a smaller end on the other. You're going to put one in one side, the other one's going to go into the airline tube or the vacuum line that comes with your kit. Then you're going to insert your T fitting. Then you're going to make or insert your check valve. Again, black side's going towards the engine, green side's facing in. And it doesn't really matter. I chose to tuck it down under here so it's out of the way. You can actually take this and kind of just loop it over where there's a loop right here, but it's completely up to you. As long as you don't have your lines kinked or pinched in any way, so you have the vacuum is running through there freely. Insert that back on there, and then we can slide our clamp back on. I'm using these big curved pliers. You can probably just use a pair of regular pliers to get down in there, needle nose pliers even. Let's take this and slide it. That'll do it for a look at and installation on the Demco Air Force One braking system on our 2014 Ford Edge.